Hi, everybody. David Noor. Want to welcome you to the Avnir monthly webinar series. Hope you're enjoying a fantastic summer. I am coming to you from Menlo Park. As some of you know, I'm spending a lot of time in Silicon Valley for our Avnir startup, meeting with investors, meeting with prospective customers and partners, and I really want to be at the epicenter of some really interesting technologies being built. So I'm delighted you're here. We are live on LinkedIn and Facebook and YouTube and X. If you've attended any of the previous sessions, I do these monthly webinars to really share relationship economics insights with our various audiences. As you may also know, with avnir.com, that's our website, we have launched an early access design partner program. We're still generally not available, but the 20 or so customers that are using the platform are getting some really good insights from it, and they're giving us some great, what I call, feed forward. So again, we're learning some painful lessons like data hygiene, and Magellan, our AI agent, is only as good as the data we feed it and the inference it can make on what's a great relationship for you. That could probably be very different than what it is for me. So the goal is really to, I don't want to be a feature factory. I want to build relationship solutions to the real pains, real challenges that our customer base is facing. So these webinars are intended to be educational. They're intended to share, 2 decades of being a student of this topic, and hopefully make them highly relevant. And I got to tell you, today's topic, the summer nobody's watching, is actually one of my favorite concepts, because rightfully so, we're conditioned in many ways to use the summer to slow down. And I welcome that. Physically, mentally, I think we all need a break. But while others are slowing down, I want to build momentum. And I've always coached teams. Yes, by all means, kids are out of school. One of my clients calls this season hostage season, because kids are home from school, and you feel not just obligated, but you want to spend time with them, and that's all valuable. And I'm not saying don't do that. I've just, for as long as I can remember, I've believed in what I call work-life blending. So I want to spend quality time with the family, and I believe, and I want to take some time off, and I want to disengage, really disengage, and I believe I can build some momentum, especially as you see others kind of how they're thinking about this season. So summer's not the problem, right? The challenge is what most leaders do with it. They assume clients are unavailable, decisions are delayed, business development can wait. Nothing meaningful is really going to happen till September. And this assumption creates an opportunity for everyone willing to think differently. And that's really what I want you to do, is really think about this differently in a meaningful way, in that, where could be the chances? Where could be the real opportunities for you to leverage, like I said, all those bullet points by others, to think about this differently, think about this more proactively. So if you think about it, traditional summer mindset, right? Most firms enter this, what I call, maintenance mode. Partners take vacations, clients become harder to schedule. Internal team is very focused on delivery, while business development becomes really choppy or inconsistent. Strategic outreach kind of gets postponed. Don't worry about sending that email. Nobody's going to see it anyway. They're all on vacation, right? So the default posture becomes, let's pick this back up after Labor Day. And here in the US, that Labor Day is, again, September timeframe. And I think that's a missed opportunity. I think that's just again, you can certainly welcome to think of it that way. I've always believed there's a strategic reframe. And that reframe is that quiet does not mean inactive. The market may feel slower, right? But the relationships that you have still are, you can deepen them. You can also, they can get, weakened. they can change. How often are you seeing people change jobs and companies and even some industries? Moving, by the way, 3 senior executives this past week reached out and said, either I don't think I'm going to renew my contract, the board's gone in a different direction. I've got this other great opportunity that I've been considering that I think I'm going to accept. And this is during the slow period, right? So I think there's real opportunities to create. And the absence of urgency creates room for intentionality. That's a really good, hopefully, nugget. So if you believe, or the market believes, or a lot of the competitors are slowing down, they're taking their foot off the gas, right? Could this be an opportunity for you to become a lot more intentional in the relationships you choose to invest in? So the advantage that I believe is hiding in plain sight is when everybody slows down, attention becomes even more scarce. So if during the regular normal busy season, your target audience, your target relationships are overwhelmed, think about it a second. During the slow period, inboxes are lighter. I'm getting still newsletters, but hopefully less spam. Calendars become a lot more flexible. I'm seeing a lot more gaps in my calendar, so they're not all back to back. That allows me to make time to think, right? Conversations feel less transactional. The last 3 I've had today has been, we start with the weather because there's torrential downpours, and so I got caught in flight delays, and right, we talk a lot about the heat and humidity, and so it's less, hey, let's just get down to, I got 15 minutes. I want to cover these 3 bullet points, right? So it's less transactional, and leaders have more space to think. I've got to tell you, that's one of my favorite times is when, and I can't do it at my desk. Full disclosure, I'm a stacker. Okay, this is going to be a therapy session. I'm a stacker. I've got a lot of different stacks of things. So I go sit on the couch, and I just either read something, or I write something, or it's just opportunities to think. And I don't think we make enough time of that. So if you become thoughtful in your outreach, you have a dramatically better chance in this slow period to get noticed, to really create awareness. And this is pretty consistent with the relationship economics principles, right? So you got to build value before that value is needed. So most leaders, think about it, invest when they need a referral or an introduction or a deal, or they need help. Strategic ones invest when there's no immediate ask. And I've always said it's a heck of a lot easier for you to ask for help, for you to ask for something, if you start by investing. So that makes a really valuable relationship later if you use this time, if you use this opportunity to invest. So hello, Bob. Bob Trojan is here. And by the way, I think I mentioned we're live on LinkedIn and Facebook and X and YouTube. I would encourage you to jump in. Bob Trojan, longtime friend, former client, great points on the summer. I'm the only one on the Hill in DC in August. Bob, I can imagine. I can get a Senate chairman, chief of staff appointment same day instead of a month ahead during the season. Bob, you're exactly right, because we mentally check out during this period. And the comment I made earlier, thanks for jumping in, is that this is the phenomenal opportunity for that intentionality. This is a really great chance to jump in. And we're going to talk about 3-4 really critical points on how to do that. So reactive versus proactive, right? So reactive leaders wait for a quote unquote trigger. You've got a stalled pipeline. You've got, maybe a new opportunity that you're thinking about, a client problem, a conference or an event, a referral request. Proactive leaders, proactive relationship builders create the trigger. They're not waiting on something. I told the team that I was working on last week, WAIT, we are in trouble if we're waiting on something, versus how do we initiate the conversation? How do we, right, share relevant insights? I got to tell you, I have 0 clients that need more information. You know what every one of them needs? Insights. You know what they need? Foresight. You know what they need? Help me see around the corner. Help me anticipate challenges, opportunities. Not everybody's damaged, right? Opportunities that I might not be thinking about. So if you create value without an immediate transaction, summer is the ideal opportunity for this proactive behavior. Doug Lehman is joining us. I love this. Getting beyond, thanks for jumping in, Doug. Getting beyond getting attention, being memorable, timing factors in. Doug, absolutely. In layman's terms, by the way, if you don't follow Doug, he does these fabulous, in layman's terms, videos that really summarize great ideas. I'm a big fan of Doug and his work. And he's exactly right. The timing is critical. But I got to tell you, for one client last year, I had this amazing opportunity, and I can't take credit for this. The idea came from a Relationship Economics Summit, which is, by the way, coming up again this fall, avneer.com/res, R-E-S, Relationship Economics Summit. Eric McCarthy, longtime friend, board member, venture capital, private equity partner. In one of the previous summits, he talked about how well do you know your customers' customers. So about a year ago, I did a project for a client where I had this amazing opportunity to go interview not just their customers, but their customers' customers, and really understanding kind of their challenges, their opportunities, how they try to go to market, how do they get attention, how do they deliver value, and the operational efficiency and effectiveness of their go-to-market efforts was just mind-blowing. And every one of those customers said, I really appreciate when this firm reaches out when there's no immediate engagement, where there's no immediate opportunity, because what they experience is a demonstrated vested interest in their success. And I'm telling you, summer is a phenomenal opportunity to do that. But it goes back to this proactive behavior, and it goes back to becoming intentional in those relationships you choose to invest in. So why do leaders miss this opportunity? Well, delivery crowds out relationship investments, right? We're busy. Consulting leaders are often trapped between, right, serving current clients. I've got existing engagements, and I've got to manage my teams, and I got to solve operational issues, and I've got to chase immediate revenue. And the real opportunity is that relationships are certainly seen as important, but not urgent. And here's the key. And what is important, but not urgent, is often gets neglected. So those relationships, they'll always be there. I got to tell you, I spoke with a really seasoned professional service, a consulting firm partner. I like this. We're in the spring of our relationship. I've been warmly introduced to him, and I really like this guy. He is seasoned. He's got that calm demeanor about him. And he was telling me a story of one of their biggest clients where they assumed that business was going to be there. They assumed the tail end of that work is just going to continue. And no fault of their own, the customer goes through this disruption, this uproar, this havoc, this chaos, which, by the way, for all of us in professional services, creates a ripple effect. So when the customer puts that project on hold, not only are we scrambling to how do we replace that revenue, but you had allocated time and effort and resources to that client that now you need to reallocate somewhere else. So a lot of times that relationship development, business development gets neglected. And I got to tell you, the most successful individuals, teams, and organizations I've ever worked with have this unbelievable commitment to consistency. I try to do that myself. I try to talk to at least 4 prospects, not existing customers, and they could be existing customers in relationships, but they're not active. I try to speak with, right, this antiquated device called a telephone, right? Call them at least 4 a day, every day. Think about it a second. That's 20 in a week. That's 100 in a month. And that tends to keep you top of mind. That keeps you, right, fresh. I'm also in the listen and learn mode. So I'm asking a lot of questions. I'm learning in that process. And summers are fantastic opportunities to do that. So what's the cost of staying heads down? Somebody told me the other day, hey, listen, we're heads down, focused on delivering. That's great. The challenge is delivery alone doesn't build the next quarter or the next year. So when leaders spend the entire summer just focused on delivery, look at what happens. Dormant relationships that you haven't touched base with stay dormant. One of the Avner customers said, as we pick your top contacts, he was saying, I'd done business with this client like 15 years ago. I haven't done anything with them in 5 years. What a fantastic opportunity to reignite that dormant relationship. Client relationships stay very narrow. They remember you for just that one transaction. Conference prep happens way too late. There's a lot of stuff going on in the fall. Fall pipeline begins, right? Cold, right? You're scrambling for the next opportunity. And competitors quietly strengthen their position. Said another way, somebody else is dating your girlfriend. So today's delivery it's great. Don't take your eye off that ball, but it's gonna consume tomorrow's growth. And a lot of professional services are penny wise and pound foolish in, we're heads down, we're operators, right? We're focused, we're delivering value today. That's great. It cannot be at the cost of that future growth. So I call this the summer momentum model. 4 strategic relationship plays that I try to run every summer. Starts with, how do I deepen key relationships? This is a fantastic time. And I call them relational on-ramps, right? Most everybody makes summer plans. Hey, remind me of, are the kids still at home? Are they still young, or are they out of school? You guys empty nesters, and what are you doing, and what's up? And so I'm using the human side of our business to connect in a meaningful, in an authentic way. By the way, everybody has a BS radar. If you don't care, if you don't mean it, don't do it. But it's a fantastic chance to engage in a meaningful way. Number 2, reactivate dormant contacts. I'm going to talk a good bit about that. Reconnect with alumni, right? Customer alumni, partner alumni, colleagues, former employees. It's a fantastic opportunity to reconnect with those alumni. And then really prepare for fall conference events and pursuits. So 4 things. These are not random activities, right? This is not haphazard. This is not, I didn't come, out of this. I didn't come up with this from seat of my pants. These are the things that I believe they're genuinely relationship investments that compound, and they have enormous potential to add real revenue to if your fiscal year is calendar year, the second half of this year, the work you do this summer has an opportunity to impact the relationships you invest in this summer, have a real potential of impacting your revenue for this year. It goes without naming names, but I feel like I'm pestering the crap out of this one client, really good guy. I genuinely like him. We hit it off, right? I don't understand it, but he's struggling with decision decay, right? He's dragging his feet on something we talked about a month ago. And I'm trying to convey, look, if you run similar plays now, could it have a real impact on your business in Q3 and Q4, and especially in Q4? So the summer momentum model, here we go. We're going to jump into each one of them. Again, as a reminder, this session focused on the summer nobody's paying attention to, the time of the year where everybody else slows down. I like momentum. I like, how do I leverage this time to really create an unfair advantage in the market? So I'm live. We're live on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, X. I encourage you to jump in with your questions, with your comments, if this stuff resonates with you. So let's talk about the focus on relationship depth versus health, right? Instead of chasing more contacts, I feel like I'm a flag-carrying advocate of this. This isn't about more contacts. And at the risk of this contrarian view, you need some critical mass, but everybody wants more, right? More logos, more contacts, more, people in our Salesforce or CRM environment, more campaigns. Let's beat people over the head once a week isn't enough. Let's go to beat them, let's email them 5 times a week. Let's do it daily. So, yes, the quantity matters, but I think you would agree the quality is far more valuable. So, look at the questions on the left hand side. Which client only knows one part of our firm? Which relationships are strong personally, but they're weak strategically? Which advocates could become sponsors? Which relationships are at risk? We call them flight risk of becoming highly transactional. So, almost like the Target logo, right? At the center are strategic. We call those ideal relationship profiles. Deep trust. You've got mutual influence. You've got aligned growth potential. Then, as you come out in the outer rings, they go from strong to functional to familiar. And what you have to understand is the depth you create creates more growth opportunities than just breadth alone. In the breadth part, the quantitative, you're gonna have to kiss a lot of frogs to find the prince. I don't know about you, I'm just not that keen on kissing a lot of frogs. I want to pour love and support and insights and ideas into relationships who get you, relationships who value you, relationships who value the uniqueness that you bring. So I don't honestly, I don't want to chase anybody. If I haven't done a good enough job conveying the value that I bring, that you get it and you get that it could be instrumental to the success of your business, one of us is in the wrong conversation. And we both have way too much to do. So I want to focus, I want to tighten that aperture and really focus on that target logo on the right with really more strategic relationships. Doug is jumping in again. Appreciate Doug. Here we go with active, not passive, proactive, not reactive, context matters, quality, good value. Appreciate you, Doug. Appreciate you jumping in and being here. I need more friends like you in my life. So be like Doug. For the rest of you, be like Doug. So you probably are tired of hearing me talk about this, continuum or this process that I've been advocating for a whole bunch of years, which is if you start with the goal in mind. I know you've got a revenue target. I know you've got a end result you're after. Come to the left with me. Pivotal contacts. Who do you need? Relationship bank. Who do you know? The whole process is predicated by the relationship currency deposits or investments you're willing to make, you're able to make consistently over some period of time. That we call intelligent relationship management. This is in essence the engine behind the Avenir platform. We've in essence AI powered what I've been teaching for 2 decades. So when I say deepen those relationships, a really good approach is the 20, what I call the top 20 summer review. So revisit your more strategic relationships. For each one, assess what's the current strength. And again, what we've built based on 12 attributes in the platform, we've built something called the Relationship Signature Index. It's our relationship score based on its depth, its health, its relevance, right? There's your RSI score. How about the relevance? There you go. This is the continuum, right? We've identified 10 unique phases every relationship goes through, from initial contact all the way to a lifelong ally. And we've got over 10,000 data points that say somebody buys at stage 6. They repeat buy or refer you to somebody else at stage 8. So Magellan, our AI guide, coaches you, if you're at stage 2 with someone, of how to go from 2 to 4 to 6 to 8. But you have to start at some sort of a baseline of where are they? And relevance is huge. How about recent value exchange? Recent value exchange, right? Some of these quote unquote relationships are not a dialogue, they're a monologue. You sit there, you be quiet. Let me tell you how smart I am. Yeah, that gets really boring really quickly, and people disengage. By the way, do you have access to broader stakeholders? We've developed this company map and we start with intimacy, not an org chart. How familiar are you? And what I love is the system shows you, yeah, you might have, and by the way, guilty, you might have 200 contacts at that company, but you have 8 relationships where you've got any kind of depth or relevance. And by the way, what's the next meaningful value creation move? And what I don't want you to do is don't confuse familiarity, the outer ring, with strength. Because a relationship can feel really comfortable. Who doesn't want to go have coffee with someone who's nice and pleasant? And who doesn't want to talk to somebody who always takes your calls? But don't confuse comfortable with strategic. And specifically, right? They could be very comfortable. They could be great, but they're not developed in a meaningful way. And that's where the intentionality comes in. I know we're in the World Cup season. If you've been watching, I think you agree, and I've got now videos of this, that 90% of these games are played when the teams, when players doesn't have the ball. And if you watch really closely, the best teams, the final four, are comprised of players who are always thinking, where should I be? What should I be doing? How do I put myself and my team in the best possible position so when we do get the ball, we can create an opportunity? In the business context, you know what that is? It's an influence map. So the traditional org chart on the right, I don't want to take anything else from it, anything away from it. It's important, right? It's based on titles and reporting lines. And you know what the left is based on? Trust and expertise and relationships. Who are those trusted operators? Who are those influencers? Who are the connectors? How does the favor economy work in that account? And I'm doing this for global clients where I'm telling them, look, right? The org chart on the left shows you structure, and that's valuable. The influence map on the right is the reality. We all know this. Decisions are rarely made where authority sits. So who are the advisors? Who are the board members? Who are the trusted operators? Who are those informal networks where things get done? Summer is a fantastic opportunity to start identifying these insights into your accounts if you don't know them already, and really start figuring out how things get done. But you got to move beyond I'm just checking in. You're not a hotel front desk. Checking in, my favorite. I'm rolling up to the front desk with a carry-on, right, after a long delayed flight, and that's what the person asks me. Checking in? No, I'd like to have my tires and my battery changed on my car. You guys do that here? So stop checking in. It's a weak outreach because it sounds like, hope you're doing well. By the way, I'm guilty of this, but I genuinely care, right? Just checking in, would love to catch up, right? These messages put a huge burden on the recipient. And a stronger, much stronger outreach, right, creates and begins with relevance. So let's talk about leading with value. Give them a reason to engage. I've always said, have you ever tried pushing a rope? It doesn't work. So here's an article I read that reminded me of our last conversation, and I thought it might be of interest to you. Read paragraph 3 in particular. You see the difference between that and checking in. Just wanted to see if you were okay. What are you, my mother? I love the caring part, but add value. Here's an introduction of someone I met. I love doing this part. Here's somebody else that I met that I believe in my heart, based on what I know about the two of you, you would appreciate getting to know each other. A thoughtful question. Did I read that you were doing this? Just out of curiosity, how do you plan to get there? Here's something I've observed. I was at an event last night and they were talking about this, and it reminded me of, and I'm wondering how you guys are addressing that. Here is something I'm thinking of. Would love your lens, would love your perspective on that. So the goal is not to remind them that you're alive, you exist. I'm here, right? The goal is to reinforce that they're better off because you're in a relationship together. Let me say that again. Your goal during the summer in your outreach efforts is not to remind them you exist. Look at me, right? It's to remind them, it's to reinforce that they're better off because you're in a relationship together. And that's more than a transaction. So the only way I know how to do that is through this intellectual curiosity. You deepen relationships by asking better questions, not more questions, better questions. I'm on with a senior executive yesterday on a Zoom, and we're talking about her growth aspirations, right? She runs a pretty large piece of business right now, and they're talking about potentially acquiring another business and really not just organic growth but inorganic growth, and if you understand um, uh, really integration of the entire value chain, right? That's what they're trying to do. So I asked if she has the right people, good intentions, but the right people in the critical roles she needs to pull this off. And the value that I brought is I've interviewed 90 customers, and I've built something called the human capital pyramid, which again, I'm going to show at our Relationship Economics Summit, avneer.com/RES, Relationship Economics Summit. There's two parts. Front of the week is the Leadership Development Program. Second half of the week is our Executive Symposium. It's coming up in October. I'm going to present it at that event, but I gave her a glimpse. And she picked up on it exactly as we had discussed. So instead of asking, how are things going? Look at that. What has changed most in your priorities this year? We spoke last quarter. We spoke earlier this year. Tell me what's evolved. Where's your team experiencing unexpected friction? Tell me what team isn't experiencing friction. What I want to know is what friction do they anticipate? Which ones were unexpected? What are you preparing for in the second half of the year? This is a really good touch base. Halfway through the year, we have enough data points to figure out what's gone well, and we sure as hell better be thinking about how we're going to think and do things differently the second half of this year. This is the time, not September. Now is the time, great time, to go find out how they're going to think differently. 4, what issues deserve more attention than they're getting? Last time I checked, there's only 24 hours in a day. We're up working, right? 16, sometimes 18 plus of those. So in that limited capacity, what's getting your headspace, mind share, not just wallet share? 5, where could the outside perspective would be most useful? Believe it or not, one of the biggest roles I play is a sounding board. I'm a really good coach before that executive does something. I'm friendly fire. And I had a conversation, I think it was Saturday or Sunday. I've known this executive, phenomenal go-to-market leader. He is in a great position to become the president of this company. And we were talking on Saturday because this guy is putting in all kinds of hours. And I said, listen, I don't want to add to your plate. My job is to be that Sherpa or that guide. And I just let him talk. And then I asked a couple more questions. And then we talked a little bit more about a couple of things. So that sounding board becomes invaluable. So the intellectual curiosity creates both relational and contextual relevance. When you ask great questions, people see you highly relevant to the world. And that relevance creates gravity or pull. If they're prospects, they're like, hey, we're thinking about this thing in the fall, would love to have you involved. If they're a prospective client, yeah, that sounds interesting. Would like to see the demo of Avneer and see what you guys are up to. So I want you to amplify your intellectual curiosity about not just what's happening, but why. And how can you add unique value? So dormant relationships don't mean dead. Some of your best opportunities are sleeping. They're in hibernation. So dormant relationships are a lot of times customer alumni in their past world or yours, past prospects. I love following up with prospects where there was no action, delayed action, that for whatever reason, the work we're talking about together got derailed, or even if I lost it. Even if I lost it to a competitor, I want to follow up and follow through and say, how did that event go? How did that meeting go? What did you do with that opportunity? Last time we spoke was February 24th. What have you been up to since? So summers are fantastic chances to reconnect with past colleagues. I just sent a text message to someone. Did I see that you moved on to something else? Right? Old referral or referral sources. I've said over the years, something like 90% of my business comes from people that hear me speak, they read my work, or I'm referred by their past client, or I'm referred by somebody else. Industry peers. I'm reconnecting with other coaches and consultants, and I'm getting to know a whole lot of other AI founders. And then past board or association contacts. I've served on several boards. I've been very active with several industry associations. This is the time to reach back out and reconnect. And if the trust foundation exists, you've just lacked relevance. And it's a really good time to reconnect, re-engage, hopefully in a meaningful way. So reactivation works because you create recognition. You have shared history. There's a lower trust barrier. You can get to context much faster. And you're going to get much better responsiveness because you got name recognition. The key is, right, filter those dormant relationships. You got to prioritize before you reach out. Is there a meaningful reason, right, for prior trust? Your goals? Can I create value for them in some meaningful way now? Is there a natural reason to reconnect? If you try to force it, I've said it, everybody has a BS radar. They'll see right through that you're trying to be someone you're not, or you're desperate for a transaction. Don't do that. Come up with a real reason, come up with a logical reason to connect in a meaningful way. When you do that, you use this summer opportunity to re-engage and demonstrate a vested interest in their success. Respectfully, not about you. It's about how they're better off because of you. And I've talked about this for 20 plus years, this relationship value pyramid, right? And we're building this actively in the Avenir platform, right? Where you got relationship score and you've got a continuum of where is this person and what has to happen? What are their priorities? What are their pressures? What do they value for me to move them from one phase to another? What will it take? And we're using AI to power this, to say, look, here's what this person really cares about. Here's what they really value. And being intentional about that goes a long way. So a better reactivation message, right? And I'm going to show you a relationship ladder in a second, is acknowledging that there's been a time gap. Listen, I've done it and I've found a lot of success in, take the high road, apologize. Listen, for the relationship guy, I've done a terrible job staying in touch with you. Now, you can't be me, so come up with your own, but acknowledge that there's been a gap in our discussions. Reference a shared history. Hey, do you remember that thing we were working on? Or do you remember that trip? And do you remember that project? Who was that woman that was leading that initiative? And you got some shared history together. Offer a timely reason. I read this. I saw this. It made me think of you. Lead with curiosity or value. I'm wondering how you plan to do that. And by all means, avoid an immediate ask. If you ask them immediately for something, it screams transactional. It screams the only reason this person is calling is because they want something. Don't do that. So the first goal is to restart the relationship, not extract, not withdraw. You're trying to withdraw $1,000 in an account where you've only deposited $10. I don't know about your bank. My bank won't let me do that. So don't do that. So the relationship ladder becomes, right, recognition first, conversation, relevance, value exchange, leading up to strategic opportunity. Don't jump from silence to solicitation, right? Relationships need a progression. Relationships need, again, Wendy and I just celebrated 30 years. Most of us who've been married a while did not propose to our significant other on the first date. So don't do that, especially if they've been dormant for a while. So reconnect, re-engage, be relevant, create real value, and let that elevate to what's next and where do we go from here. Another really good place is your alumni network. So former colleagues, some of you know, I was in my previous life with one of the big consulting firms, and I recently went to one of their alumni events, and 600 former partners show up at this event. Why do you think that is? Because you know where the other ones have gone? Now they've become CEOs, and they've become COOs and CFOs, and they've become board members. And every one of that was a very prospect rich environment. Why? Those people know you. They know your culture. They know your capabilities. They know your credibility. They know the kind of people you surround yourself with. They know institutionally where you add value. A lot of firms allow these relationships to disappear after somebody leaves. That is preventable relationship leakage. Your alumni network is a fantastic chance to reconnect with them. So stop treating departures as a disconnect. The employment relationship ends, but the relationship doesn't have to. So former colleagues can become clients. They can become referral sources. By the way, I'm guilty of this as well. Somebody leaves and you're like, to heck with them. I'm going to move on. That's a mistake, especially if they're left on good terms. They can become a talent source. They can become an industry connector. They can become a partner. They can give you market intelligence. Their value can actually increase, believe it or not, after they leave, because now they know you and they have that outside lens. So like anything else, you want to map those relationships. You're going to segment the alumni by their future relevance. So former senior leaders, high performers, client-facing professionals, industry specialists, people, now working inside those target accounts, if they leave a tech company and they go inside that account. I've had this happen. I had a client in both direction who was a CISO go work for a tech company, and I've had tech company clients go inside FedEx as one of their executives. People with strong ecosystem influence, right? Not every alumni needs the same level of investment of time and effort, so you have to prioritize very intentionally. And what I really want you to think about is, what's the value proposition to that alumni, right? Why should they stay connected to you? Again, relevant insight, peer conversation, selective kind of introductions, professional development. These are all fantastic opportunities, right, to activate. You got to create value that is ideally bidirectional. Moving on to events and conferences. A lot of these are coming up in the fall. And again, we're live: Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, X. I would encourage you, jump in with questions, comments, anything, as others, Bob and Doug of others have done. So let's talk about kind of the whole conference world, conference space, right? I'm a big believer of treating these events or conferences almost like a theater act of before, during, and after. Before the event, I'm a big believer of, I want to create an advantage. I want to set very clear relationship objectives. I want to try to meet these people. I want to follow up with these people. I want to reconnect with these people. I want to activate my network early. I want to know who's already going, who's going to be there. If you're in the cybersecurity world, RSA or Black Hat are huge events, right? I want to research and personalize each individual. I want to offer value up front. I want to secure meetings and be very intentional. I'm allergic to vagueness. Let's find a time to meet for coffee. Too vague for me. How about Tuesday at 10 o'clock at that Starbucks in the main lobby, right? I want to prepare. It's going to be a crowded event. I want to really focus it on being intentional about those relationship investments. When you do this, when you're that focused before the event, think about it. Think about what happens during and after. You're going to engage much more meaningfully. You're going to add value in the moment. You're going to capture key takeaways. You're going to follow up with a purpose. The results become a definitive return on the relationship investment you made at this event. So stop just showing up and really start thinking about a return on relationship investments that you can garner. This is also, it reinforces the whole idea of trust-based referrals. So I'm a big believer of both making referrals and recommendations. By the way, you have to understand every introduction, every referral is a recommendation. And if people are not willing to refer or recommend you, this would be a really good time to ask, why is that? So I like pyramids, right? So at the bottom of it, they're contacts and the cold outreaches, not as valuable. Next, highly transactional relationships. Better, but still not, there's not a lot of depth there. Next, active and engaged relationships, definitely stronger. The pinnacle of it, you see this, is the trust-based, deeply trust-based relationships. And if you focus on climbing, not expanding, right? I'm deepening as I go up this pyramid. And again, there's a real flywheel. There's a real kind of added benefit. So think about it. You invest in a relationship, you earn their trust. I'm going around the flywheel on the right? You receive that referral, you create growth, you reinvest and repeat, and that flywheel becomes invaluable. So you build quality over quantity, you're deepening trust over any one transaction, and you're getting warm introductions and referrals into accounts instead of cold calling. I don't know about you. How many spam emails do you get a day? And if you call me and I don't know you, respectfully, I'm not picking it up. And I think most people are that way. So warm introductions, warm referrals create a huge opportunity. And this summer is the time to do that. So how do we go from business cards to business growth? And for the younger audience, business cards are these cardboard things that we used to hand out to people, right? So what I want to do is I want to turn that conference into a connection. And as I said, treat it like a theater act before, during, and after. And by the way, I'll show you how we'll send you these slides. Those that have registered on the website, we'll send you, or if you want to DM me or send me a message, we'll send you these details. But I want you to be intentional at each of those phases. So how do you prepare with a purpose? How do you engage with intentionality? How do you follow through? Follow up is a transaction. How do you follow through consistently to turn those contacts, again, that very crowded conference, into something a lot more meaningful? And the post-conference follow-up that really compounds, you got to do it quickly. You got to personalize the message. You got to deliver value. You got to propose a next step. You got to stay in front of them without being intrusive. I don't want to pester anybody. But if you're polished, if you're professional, if you're persistent, if you follow up and follow through, most people appreciate that. Hey, listen, I'm sorry we haven't been able to connect. How's next week for you? But you got to be intentional about the delivering of that value. And the last thing I mentioned, in my summer plays is creating time to think. You got to create space for relationship thinking. So reviewing your priorities, identifying where do I have a gap in my network, reallocating attention, leadership's attention, preparing for that strategic outreach, strengthening internal coordination. You cannot do these if you're walking around like playing whack-a-mole, right? I talk about it's very difficult to create fire suppression and design fire extinguishers if you're always walking around with one, right? So a sprinkler system takes intentional design. Fire extinguishers, you're walking around, I'm putting out one fire after another. So the quieter the month, I believe the more you have an opportunity, the more you have room to think, which leads me to this idea of a summer relationship sprint. So in 30 days, right, I can audit, I can prioritize, I can engage, I can build continuity. 30 days, just this next month. And that momentum requires more than just a single touch. I want to make sure I'm intentional about it. And the weekly, kind of the weekly discipline, right? You set aside an hour each week to review kind of the prioritized relationships. You create value deposits. You initiate the introduction or outreach. You reactivate one dormant contact. You prepare for one strategic conversation. And I don't know about you, if it's not on my calendar, it doesn't get done. So when you schedule it, right, it gets strengthened. It gets strengthened in a meaningful way. So you do not have to do all this by yourself. Do not take this on as a solo exercise. So we like team-based relationship leverage in a pod or in a team-based environment. Who has access we're not using? Which relationships overlap? Where are we single threaded? I talk a lot about relationship bow ties. One of you, one of them, versus shoelaces, where now you're multi-threaded. You have multiple contacts. Who should join the next conversation? Which relationship should become institutionalized rather than individualized? So summer is a perfect time to improve on that relationship orchestration or relationship coordination. And what it often leads to is a portfolio approach. And again, we're trying to build this in the Avneer platform of most leaders spend time with people they really like, and people who reply, and people they already know well, and people who ask for attention, versus how do I invest in emerging decision makers, future advocates, dormant relationship multipliers, right? Cross-functional stakeholders, relationships tied to future opportunities. So again, if you're over reliant on just relationship comfort, right? It's not really determining the best allocation of your time, effort, and resources in this process. So home stretch, right? Cost of ignoring it is real. There's opportunity cost, there's revenue leakage, you have a higher sales cost, you have weaker referrals, and your reputation erodes. Again, flywheel, you measure the health, you have monthly activities, you align with the business outcomes, you quantify the impact, you optimize and invest, and that compounds growth over time, and it does it very consistently. So what I want to wrap up with is I think we talked a little about this already. Measuring what matters. We're measure a relationship health score, measuring engagement frequency, depth, activity, impact, coverage. Right. Again, it leads to from activities and even insights into actionable insights. Again, you can take time to read that on your own. I talk a lot of clients about relationship multipliers, right? Shared connections, strategic introductions, that ecosystem influence, the compounding effect of multiple contacts. That all leads to really, really meaningful ways that things get done. So what I hope you'll take away from this is, beyond relationships being an asset, start by mapping your most important ones, measuring what really matters in a meaningful way, turning insights into action. How do I multiply that impact through others? How do I build for the long term? And I'm trying to tell you, the summer is a really, really good opportunity to do that. So if this has been useful to you, if this has been helpful to you, we're building a really interesting, and I'm so excited about our efforts now. Also in a mobile app, we're launching a desktop app. So really trying to bring that data ecosystem of your various relationships together. We will email you if you registered. Sarah on our team does a phenomenal job in creating awareness. If you registered for this session, we'll follow up with an email. We also have a relationship assessment that might be really useful to you. We're now accepting the next cohort of early access design partners. If you just go to avneer.com and request a demo or early access, you can find it there. Our next date together is Tuesday. I like doing these on Tuesday, August 11th, 1 o'clock Eastern. I'm going to talk about 5 relationships that change everything. 5 relationships that are meaningful. Mr. Missal, nice to see you, sir. Thank you for being here. Thanks, David. Great nuggets to explore. Please send slides to you. Absolutely will do. So on behalf of our team, thanks for being here. I'm David Noor. We're really excited about what we're building in Avneer. I hope you get a chance to check it out at avneer.com and join us for the next session on Tuesday, August 11th. Thanks, everybody. Make it a great rest of your week. Take care. Bye-bye.